Hello, this is a continuation of the instructional videos about the 2.7 homework exercises. We're going to continue with number 6 and go from there. So on numbers 6 through 10, we have inequalities. It says solve the following inequalities and write the answer in set notation. So let's go ahead and solve, then we'll talk about how to write your answer. So number 6, we have 14h plus, in parentheses, negative 7.2. And that's really just saying the same as minus 7.2. So I'm just going to start solving by adding 7.2 to both sides. So I have now just 14h is less than negative 212 and 8/10 or 0.8. To get rid of that 14, I'm going to divide by a positive 14. And because I'm dividing by a positive number, I don't have to switch the direction of the inequality. That can just stay the same way that it is. Okay, so there's our answer, but to write it in set notation, you need some fancy symbols around it. You're going to have some squiggly brackets. And we'll start with what we already had, and we're just going to add to it. So there's our answer. And you're just going to, in front of that, put the variable that you were solving for. And a long straight line, that means such that. So this is saying the variable h such that this is always true. H is less than negative 15.2. And that's our completed answer in set notation. Okay, number 7, I had a typo, so you'll notice I wrote in the k right there, but it should be 8k minus 3/4 is greater than or equal to 10k. So I'm going to get all my k's on the same side. Subtract 8k. I'll have now negative 3/4 is greater than or equal to 2k. Now I'm going to get rid of that positive 2 by dividing by 2. Negative 3/4 divided by 2 is the same as timesing by 1/2. Now again, I didn't divide by a negative number, so I can keep my inequality going the direction it already was. Negative 3/4 times 1/2 is negative 3/8, and you can put that in your calculator if you want to make it a decimal. So there's my answer. I have now solved for k. Negative 3/8 is always greater than or equal to k. I could also say it the other way around. K is less than or equal to negative 3/8. And for set notation, for our final answer, that's how we want to write it. So we have our k, the long straight such that line, and our squiggles. So here's our final answer. Number 8, still solving each inequality and writing our answer in set notation. I'm going to start by distributing this decimal. 0.5 times 8 is 4r. 0.5 times 22 is positive 11. We'll start solving, so I'm going to subtract 2r to get all the variables on one side. So positive 2r plus 11 is less than or equal to 11. Subtract 11. Positive 2r is less than or equal to now 0. So that side doesn't just disappear, it just becomes the number 0. And I'm going to divide by 2. And r is less than or equal to 0. And let's make that in set notation. There you go. Number 9. On number 9, we have a 3 on both sides. So I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that by timesing by 3. Those cancel or become 1. 75 now is greater than 15b minus 30. There's a couple of different ways you could do that. You could divide each thing by 3. But I just got rid of the 3's altogether. I'm going to add 30 to both sides. And I get 105 is greater than 15b. Divide by 15. And b, so I'm going to write it the other way. 105 divided by 15 is 7, which is greater than b. Flip it around for our set notation. There's our variable such that b is less than 7. So just switch that all around. Final answer. Right there. All right, number 10, there's a lot of decimals happening, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those like we did earlier in chapter 2 by timesing everything by 10. And that'll move all of my decimals in one spot. So everything by 10 over here, everything by 10 on the right-hand side. So that becomes now 127, and you can keep the decimals if you want to. That's fine. This becomes just 45 plus 13p, all greater than or equal to negative, don't lose that negative, 319. So now I'll combine like terms on the same side. 127 plus 13p will be 140p. I'm going to subtract 45 from both sides so I can get all my numbers without variables together. Keeping still the greater than or equal to, and I have negative 364. Big numbers. I'm going to divide by my 140. Still positive numbers, so I haven't yet had to divide by a negative and switch the inequality sign. That's good. P is greater than or equal to, and again, I just put this in the decimal, but you can simplify that fraction if you want to. For the decimal I got was negative 2.6. And let's make that in set notation. P such that P is greater than or equal to negative 2.6. Final answer on that one. So here's our answers for each of these inequalities, written now in set notation. The rest of these exercises are going to deal with translating from a application problem or word problem into an inequality. So these first few statements, I'm going to go ahead and scroll, numbers 11 through 16 are asking you just to translate the inequality. So we're not trying to solve anything. We're not going to graph. Well, we are going to put it on a graph. Never mind. But we're not going to try to solve for a variable. We're just translating what's here. So let's look at number 11 together. It says it is at most 5 degrees outside. So on all of these, you want to look for words that compare variables or indicate that they're not equal. So we have these two words that say at most. So that means we want nothing more than 5 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and just use a T for temperature. You can use whatever variable you want. And in the book, they just write out the whole word temperature. So you can do that as well. So I'm comparing that T, that temperature, to 5 degrees. And I don't want it to be any more, but it could equal 5. So at most means less than or equal to 5 degrees. And then it wants me to put that on my number line graph. So I'm just going to put a 0 for reference here and my positive 5. And remember, when you have less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, you're going to fill in that circle, fill in the hole, because we are including the number 5. And I'm going to point my arrow towards the direction of less than. So that includes 0. Temperatures can be negative, so it's going to keep going past 0. So there's my graph on this one. And you'll notice in the answer page it puts the dot and the arrow on the number line. You can write it that way as well, but it's easier for you to see on the computer screen if I put it above it. You can write it either way. Number 12, the show will begin in less than 5 minutes. So this already feels very similar to number 11, but I want to talk about the difference between 11 and 12, these two problems. So on the first one, we said, okay, it's going to keep going past 0. But if I'm sitting in the audience at a show and I say the show will begin in less than 5 minutes, it's impossible for the show to begin in negative minutes unless I can go back in time. But I am not Marty McFly, so can't do that. So I'll draw my picture first, my number line graph, and then let's talk about how we'd write it as an inequality. So I have, again, 5 minutes and 0 for reference. The show will begin in less than 5 minutes. So not less than or equal to, so I'm going to have an open circle here. And I'm going to point this direction. Now, I can't have it go past 0 because I can't have negative minutes. Can't do that. So I'm going to stop at 0. Let's say I'm at the show and I say this, the show will begin in less than 5 minutes, and as soon as I finish that sentence, the show begins. Lucky me. But that means that it was 0 minutes since I made that statement. So I'm going to put a little circle here, but I'm going to include it because it could start, if I got lucky, I could start the show right after I say that sentence, or as I'm saying it even. So this is how we're going to show it in a graph. How would we write that in an inequality? So I'm going to put S for show, put B for beginning, or however you want to write it. The show will begin in less than 5 minutes. So I know that this is less than 5 minutes. But I also want to stop it at 0. So this is a compound inequality where we have a situation where the variable is happening between two numbers. So we're going to write it here in the middle. So 0 is less than or equal to the show beginning, which is less than 5. Because it could start at 0, but we want it to be between. So that's where the S, where the beginning of the show happens, is between 0 and 5. That's what that kind of inequality means. And we're going to have that happen on a few of these, especially when we get into the longer word problems down below. Let's go to 13. 60 inches is the minimum height to enter. So anything greater than 60 is going to be great. You can enter. Maybe it's a roller coaster. So we're going to have, let's use H for height. And so it's minimum height, so it could be equal to 60 or greater. So our height is 60 inches or greater. I'll put that on my graph number line. That's a nice straight line there. Here's 60. I'm including 60, so I'm going to close the circle and point towards any number that is greater than that. That's number 13. Number 14, the road is between 5 and 8 miles away. Remember how in number 12 I said this was an inequality that means between? So we're going to have an inequality that looks like this one for number 14 as well. So we're going to have the road, let's say the road. We could do M for miles or R for road. And it's going to be between the numbers 5 and 8. Okay, so it's 5 is less than the road, and the road is less than 8. Okay, you'll notice on the answer page there are actually 2 correct answers for number 14. It depends on how you think about the word between. So, for example, if the road is 5 miles away, really, after I say this statement, I would still be correct if I have equal signs here. But if I don't include the endpoints, 5 and 8, then I would write it like this. And you can decide whichever one you think is right. Both of the answers are correct. So then in my number line graph, it should match whatever I said. So that's not enough room for that. Eraser. There it is. So if I have, for this one, I'm going to write 5 and 8. For this one, I'll have closed circles and the line in between, just like on number 12. For this option, I'm going to have open circles because I'm not including 5 and 8, and the line in between. So you can write either one of those is a correct answer.